Welcome to the Possible Promise podcast. We are live every Monday and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern to break down the complexities of finance and point the way to financial freedom. To tune in, go to possiblepromise.com/live. Today is June 7th, 2020, and I am your host, Brandon Oliveris.
And I am his wife, Christine.
This is episode 0, Who We Are. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited that you are tuning in to us. I'm really excited to start this podcast. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and haven't really gotten around to it until now, so I'm excited to do this. And I just want to say, by the way, it makes me happy that there's an episode 0. We've never done that before. I've done podcasts in the past. I've never done an episode 0.
Only you would say that, because you're such a geek.
I know, but that's what I mean. As a programmer, it kind of makes me happy to have an episode 0, because like in programming, everything is 0 indexed, so like you start counting from 0 instead of 1. So
of course, even in finance, you can't get away from programming.
It makes me happy to have an episode 0. So, but yeah, this is the Possible Promise podcast, and I just wanted to get in here today and introduce ourselves. Tomorrow will be our official episode 1. As I said in the introduction, every Monday and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So tomorrow, Monday the 8th, at noon Eastern, we will begin with our first live show. And so if you want to join us with that, like I said, go to possiblepromise.com/live. And we'll have an area for you to chat, and I'll be able to answer your questions as they come up. And so it'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited for it. But today I just want to kind of introduce who we are and just talk about what we're doing here with this podcast. So I started Possible Promise a while ago, I think around the end of December. Was it 2019?
Is that when it was? I thought it was...
Yeah, it was around the end of December, I remember.
I thought it was like in 20.
No, it was right before Christmas, I think. And yeah, because I did some of my first stock picks before New Year's, I remember.
You did?
Yep.
Wow, I don't know where I am.
And see, Christine's usually the one to remember all the dates.
Yeah.
So this is striking. So I started this, a while back, I think around December, late December, around Christmas or so, 2019. And I started Possible Promise, as the name suggests, as sort of a way to help people to see where future promise can be, especially in finance. Just through saving, through budgeting, especially through investing. And I have some posts about why investing is the best way to really grow your wealth, or to begin building wealth in the first place if you're not there yet. No matter, how small of a bank account you might have to start with, investing is a really, really good way to start up and start building that wealth and start to have that financial freedom where, one day you don't need to depend on a job or anything like that in order to support yourself. So that's kind of the ultimate goal, I think, whenever that might be for you. And even if, you keep a job while investing, while having that side income, it's the freedom of not needing a job and yet having one if you feel like it. It gives you that ability to just kind of step out and say, I don't want to do this anymore. So that's really powerful, I think, and that's kind of my goal with Possible Promise. And I have a lot of things in the pipeline that are coming up that I plan on doing. This podcast is just the first of those, and so I'm excited for that. So my background, I'm Brandon, as I said in the introduction, and some of you might know me from past websites I've done. But I come from a programming background, much to Christine's chagrin, if I can talk. And I've been a programmer, depends how you count it, for too long. I'm 31.
For almost as long as he's been alive.
Not quite. I was not programming as an infant. I can tell you that.
I know.
much.
I was just.
I'm 31. I started programming when I was like 11. I just had this realization the other day, like, oh my god, I've been programming for 20 years, and it was just this horrifying realization of, wow, I shouldn't have been doing anything for 20 years. I feel too young for that. But I have been programming for 20 years.
No one knows he's a grumpy old man.
But they do now.
They do now.
It's true. It's true. And so I've been programming for a long time. Part of that time professionally, I'm not a 9-to-5 person, so only like 3 years professionally. You know, I did some freelance here and there, but I just love programming. And with Possible Promise, I've done a lot of customizations to it. But, you know, I have a technical background like that. But I've been interested in finance. Well, it started with kind of personal finance when I was younger. From the example of, no offense to her, my mother, who's really bad at money, at finance in all ways. And so I got into budgeting, I got into savings, and pretty soon I got into investing. Now, my first foray into investing was catastrophic because of penny stocks. It was bad. It was bad. I put a few thousand into it.
And you got in trouble.
Well, because I was on a SSI and trying to invest, it's just another topic entirely. The fact that the government gets upset at you if you try to, you know, climb your way out of poverty by, you know, investing or saving. No, you can't do that. You have to, it's like this big catch-22. But that's another topic for another day. But I did penny stocks. I lost
everything.
That was about 8 or 9 years ago now. 9 years ago? Yeah. 8
It was in 2011.
Yeah, 9 years ago. And see, Christine's the date person. If you
Usually.
want to know a date, ask Christine.
Usually.
Except
for Possible Promise, which I could have sworn you started after.
No, I promise you. I possible promise you.
Possibly promise you.
I possibly promise you. It was definitely in December.
Okay.
It just really getting started in January.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I had a horrible beginning to investing about 9 years ago. Put me off of it for a while, and then, you know, I started with index, well, not really index funds, but more ETFs, which I'll talk about if you don't know what ETFs are, but just, you know, broad market investing, kind of investing in the whole stock market or in the S&P 500 as a whole, which, you know, if you do a lot of researching on investing, people will tell you, like, that's the only way to make money, right, is by pretty much investing in the stock market as a whole, the total stock market, or in the S&P 500 or things like that, like long-term, not even individual stocks. Like, it was drilled into my head in the early days. See, that really does make me sound old.
It does.
It was drilled in my head in the early days, like, you cannot pick individual stocks, you know, everyone is horrible at picking individual stocks, you always lose at it. So I always, you know, I was doing ETFs, stuff like that, but it's, you know, it's boring. And so, and that, you know, the fact that that's my only argument against it is no, it's really not, but that was at the time. It's like, this is boring. It's like, okay, I'll add a couple $100 and I'll get a few dollars profit, or I might lose a few dollars, or, you know, depending on what the market's doing. And it was just very passive, and I'm not a passive person.
No.
So, you know, I started looking at some ways of making a little bit more active, of making a little bit more, a little faster to grow, and started getting into more active trading, individual stocks. I still was doing buy and hold in the beginning, but still I was picking individual stocks and doing pretty well, and learning technical analysis and things like that. And so in time, I eventually started getting into options. And tomorrow I'll be talking about stocks or options, so I won't talk too much about that. But I started getting into options. Sorry. And that really changed the playing field for me. So when I got into options, that was it. So, it's been a pretty lengthy journey for me getting into finance and investing, and from a programming background, which I think the programming background really helps me because I've written all sorts of little scripts to tie into different APIs to download market data and to, do technical analysis and make trades on my behalf and all this sort of stuff. So programming has really come in handy as a trader. Not saying you have to be a programmer, obviously, but it helps me anyway. Because the other thing, now we just had this discussion the other day, and I just thought right now I should mention that, by the way, I'm visually impaired. Or blind, I guess Christine would make me say.
Yes, because you have no vision.
I have no vision, and Christine's visually impaired.
Yes.
And so as such, I trade without looking at charts. Now, to some people, that's inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
Because, you want to look at the candle patterns and the price action of the stock and what it's doing and, draw support and resistance lines, and Christine's like, what's that? And
pretty much.
And it's not really important because I don't do it. So
you can't.
I can't do it.
I mean, could you just imagine a Braille chart?
Oh God, I can't.
It'd be like as big as this house.
How would it be even dynamic? That would just be.
I know.
So. Again, my programming background helps because I can write scripts to kind of give me the raw data and crunch the numbers and, calculate everything for me. But yeah, I trade without charts and I do well at it. So I think I have a different perspective on all of this because, I don't use charts. I don't use any graphs or visual elements. Now, on my website, because I know other people are sighted. Not everyone's blind, so I do have charts and such on the website. I like to show if I'm talking about a stock. But for me, when I'm looking at a stock, I can't use charts, and so that's a big part of my trading. Is just kind of looking at the raw data and the fundamentals and technical analysis and that kind of stuff. I'm not looking at actual graphic charts. And I think that kind of changes. It's a big change from how a lot of people trade. A lot of people look at chart patterns and that kind of stuff. Although I recently saw a study that chart patterns are really not much better than flipping a coin. So I'm not losing out on much.
I wonder how many people are going to disagree with that statement.
Oh, a lot of people do, I'm sure. But, it's just how it works. When you look at the chart patterns, it's not that reliable after all. And so that's how I invest. But, for me, it's really important. Investing is huge. Now, investing will be probably 98% of what I talk about because that's what I'm into. But, you have to have a strong foundation. So we will talk about other things. Budgeting is really important. Saving is really important. I mean, you can't invest unless you have something to invest with. And other personal finance topics. But, for me, it's in investing because in investing, that's your most reliable way of building long-term wealth. And I do have posts about that. Maybe I'll link to it in the notes on this episode. But, that's your most reliable way of building up long-term wealth. So I really believe in investing 100%. And, you can do so many things with it. It's very reliable, or it's very flexible. That's the word I want. Because you can do, long-term wealth building. You can do short-term kind of speculative trades. And a lot of people kind of discourage that, but it does work if you're good at it, and I've done that. I do that. And so there's so much you can do with it. And so what I want to look at is not just another, buy and hold, pick good stocks, or just invest in the market as a whole and, forget about it for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years until you retire. That's boring to me. I love finance. I love investing. I want to really get involved.